Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. This is another video for the advanced music production thread of my classes. So hopefully if you're here, you're someone that's already done a fair amount of producing in whatever DAW you might be using. I'm going to be demonstrating, as you know, in Logic. So what I'm going to explain today is busing. So there's two different ways that I'm going to focus on using busing. One is just grouping a bunch of audio tracks or instruments together. And so this could be a drum set or drum programs that you put together. It could be keyboards, it could be anything. When you want to group instruments together, to glue them, to organize them, all sorts of other things. And then another way that people primarily use busing is for reverb, where you're going to do what's called a bus send or a reverb send, where you're going to add reverbs together onto a bus. So these are the two things I'm going to share. I'm going to use three different projects to do this. One that's my own, that's simple acoustic type thing. Another that's me, but more of a production thing with a little bit more complexity. It's also like hip hop and R&B-ish. And then the last one is something I've mixed recently for some friends where it's a lot more intense, using a lot of busing and things like that. So here's the first one. This is a song that I wrote for my wedding, actually, and then recorded. Originally, I performed it just singing and playing mandolin, but when I actually went ahead and recorded it, I added guitar and bass in there as well. So when I recorded this, I decided to put two mics on my guitar and mandolin parts, just to give it allows it to give a little bit more kind of width to it. And you feel like you're, almost kind of enveloped by the instrument or something. So because of my setup, you won't be able to hear the left and rightedness of this, but basically I have both of these audio tracks for the mandolin grouped together. And if you look here, we've got mando left, mando right, bus 2, and that's all going into bus 2 here. And so if I drop this down, and you'll see this over here too. Bus 2, it's the same thing, bus 2. So this left and right is getting sent through this group bus. And all that I really did with that is I added a compressor just to glue these two tracks. It's pretty light, just to give a little bit of cohesion there. And then I did the same thing with the guitar. So and together.
Loving you feels like playing all my favorite songs. Yes, it's easy. It makes me feel alive.
Yeah, so that was a simple way of just grouping two audio tracks together. The other technique that is being used in here is reverb send, or a bus that's being used for reverb. So on those group buses, you'll notice it's bus 2, bus 3, and these are going into guitar or mandolin groups here. And sends are different. So I am basically taking these little audio pieces, and if you think of it like a tube or an actual cable is how this started. This is all just recreations of the analog boards that people used to do this with. But I'm sending this audio over to aux 1 here, which is my reverb. Now for this track, I recorded it quote unquote live, where I did mandolin and voice at the same time. So I wasn't multi-tracking it. I was trying to make it feel a little bit more organic. I just did it in the room I'm in right now. And so I didn't want to overdo it with a bunch of reverbs and so on. But here's the simple reverb I chose. It's the chroma verb that's in Logic. And I just used a little vocal hall. So here it is by itself. You can just solo out the reverb. So it's just a little bit. Here's
you want today. each morning.
is without it.
Before the sun even hits our
With
window. Crawl back in the
Without.
bed, say I love you, then go.
With again. I guess I also added a little bit of extra reverb on my vocal, just for a little bit of room. But my main reverb is this send. So each of these are getting sent over. It looks like, I don't know why, but I sent the mandolins individually, whereas the guitar I sent as a group. But it doesn't matter in this case. There's not a lot going on. So I'm sending the mandolin and guitar by themselves. So there's the quote unquote dry signal without the reverb that's getting sent to the stereo out. But then there's also a separate grouping with the reverb that's being sent too. So in the olden days, what they would do is, you would send that audio literally to a reverb, and so that would be like a plate. A plate reverb was an actual plate that took up the whole basement of a studio. There was a studio in Madison that I recorded in once that part of Nirvana's Nevermind album was recorded there, and they still had an actual plate reverb in the basement where it's like the size of a mattress or something like that, and you send audio into it, it shakes the plate, and then you pick up the audio again. Super old school. Studios would have literal rooms where they would have a speaker on one side and a microphone on the other. And so when you talk about doing a reverb send, all we're doing is basically recreating that, where you're mixing in a reverb. There's also spring reverbs, similar idea, where people would send their audio into a spring, and then pick that back up. So this is a very simple track with some reverbs going on. One level up. Here is a track that's again more produced. It's more hip hop focused, and this is the way that group busing is used the most frequently, is with drums. So this is I use Machine to program drums, and I've got my machine that's right next to me, the actual hardware stuff. But the way that this works is I've got it so it's routed to all these different tracks. So if I go over, I'm just going to go to the B section here. And you'll see I've got all these different drums represented. They're mixed in, or they're panned in different ways, but they're all moving through this bus 1. So if I go back to here, you can see I've got all of these tracks. These are whatever. There we go. That was too big. I've got all these tracks, kick, snare, hi-hat, etc. They're all going to bus 1. So they're all going through this group bus. And so before they go to the stereo out, they go through this machine bus. And so that means I can add, in this case, I just added a console to give me a little bit of compression and some EQ stuff. And then on these individual tracks, I have some kind of weird stuff. This one I decided to get kind of weird. I really liked this little static sound, but I wanted to add some stuff to it. So here's what it sounds like now. It's just that, but what it was originally was just this. I don't know why, but I just got excited about that, using it kind of as a crash. So then it became that. I've also got some extra reverb on these snares, and that's sent to bus 2. So that's the next step. Because I've got my drum bus situated here, I can do some simple stuff like glue them together with a compressor or some EQ or whatever. This plugin does both of those things. And over here, I've also got my guitars. So I'm going to get back out of my mix window. On this track, I have 4 different guitars that are kind of being pushed together. Actually, I think I used this one in the other video, so you've already seen this, but I'm just demonstrating. These are all routed through a guitar's bus. So bus 5, all going to the stereo out. And then over here, I've got 3 different buses for kind of a shorter reverb, a longer reverb, and a delay. So the shorter reverb is like putting them in a small room together. And I'm using that. My guitars, I've got a lot going on in there. But some of my drums I also put into that shorter reverb. My long reverb is much bigger. How many seconds is this? This is, yeah, more than 2 seconds long. And then I've also got a delay that's pretty heavy. So here's each of those things individually. Here's the short reverb. Why is it? Other things should be showing up in there. Okay, here's the long one. Oh, it's because they're bussed. Okay, that's like a pre and post thing. And then I've also got a delay. And so again, if I turn these way up, you can hear the guitars get way more delayed. Here, let's try this. And here's without any delay. Just gives it a little more. So that's how I'm using buses for reverbs and a delay send as well, and also using it for grouping instruments. Yeah, and then together. Yeah. So I wouldn't consider this track by any means. I mean, you'll notice there's no vocals. There's not that many tracks going on here. This isn't mixed by any means, but I've started to do some of those things.